All right, welcome back everyone to yet another episode of the series of the tutorials where we actually make our own game from scratch, depending on how far we get, but we're getting somewhere at least, so let's just keep going. As usual, link is in the description to my Patreon if you want to support me a little bit extra and get the project files as long as I'm using free assets. So yeah, let's just keep going. In this episode we will just add, because we are doing the combat system now, right? So we need a sword or weapons, so we're just gonna add a weapon to our character and work a little bit with materials, start preparing that for the future. So I got this sword and shield model from Sketchfab. Let me see if I can bring it up. Here it is. So it's this. We're gonna use this as a sword for our sword and shield guy. We will add more characters later, maybe a bow guy and a mage guy. But for now, sword and shield is good. So that's what we're gonna use. I can share this. It's CC attribution, the license, as long as I share the link for it. So I will have the link to this asset in the description as well. Yeah, so you can get it yourself or I can share it. So it's gonna be in the project, it's still free. But when we import this, we have just some textures and a white material. So we're gonna start setting up our master equipment slash character material, maybe, because we want the materials to share the same properties, because that's going to be needed in the future, and I will show you in the future why. But we want most things to have the same base material pretty much. So I'm gonna make a new folder called materials. This will be master master equipment, because equipment tends to share the same property. It will be, then we might have a master environment and stuff like that. So now I'm gonna create a material instance of this one, and I'm gonna move that. I also made this equipment folder. I'm gonna move that in here. So sword and shield. I move everything in here. And call it M sword instance. I'm gonna open it up. But first I'm gonna open this master one. And this will need a texture texture parameter 2D. I think. I'm not good with materials, but anyway. So we will have a base texture. We'll call this base. We will have a normal texture. This will be plugged into the normals. We will have everybody does different stuff. This is also the issue with doing your own game and not making your own models, because some use different textures for everything. You see, this one has a roughness texture and a ambient occlusion texture and a normal one. So it's different for everybody. But in this one, we will, since that's what we have now, we will make another one called roughness, plugged into the roughness, and another one for AO for ambient occlusion. And that's because that's what this one uses. Some use the same texture for metallic roughness and ambient occlusion and stuff like that. So we'll look at that later. But For now, you can see now when I compile this, if I go back to the sword instance, we have specific textures here. So I'm just gonna change them. So the base one is this. The AO is this. And yeah, if you already got like your mod, you don't need to this step. This is just to not skip any steps for the tutorials. And that's the roughness. So there we go. And if I now go in here and set this model, we have it here. And we can clearly see, I think the metallic is, because it's not, it doesn't have a metallic texture now. So this will be 0.5, I think. Maybe that's too much. I don't know. It doesn't look. Yeah, there it is. There is our sword. I think. So we will also. Is it the ambient occlusion or the specular? Yeah, it looks better with the AO, I think. Yeah. So I will skip the ambient occlusion texture. Not sure if it's needed or not, but and we're also gonna go in here and we're gonna do a multiplier for the normal texture. And one for the roughness. And one for the metallic. We don't have a texture now, so now we're gonna search for scalar parameter. This will be metallic. Plug that in. This will be normal multiplier. Multiplier and roughness multiplier. There we go. And by default they will be 1, so they will be the entire texture. And now in here you can see I got these values here, so I could make it way less rough. And you see. Or we're just gonna keep them to 1 now to keep the actual input from the textures. There we have. Let's do the same with the shield. Can use the same one. And there we go. And so there are a couple of reasons we want to use a master texture, but things like effects and stuff in the future will all go through the same material, basically. I will show you later. But there we have our sword. So let's now equip it to our character. And yeah, a couple of ways to do this. As I said before, we could do it through the data table to easily be able to change like what sword we're using and stuff. So let's do that. or you could just set up the character to have it from the get-go, but I like to do it this way, so I'm gonna do it that way. So then I need to go into my characters, my blueprints, my player details. Actually, let's not do that now because I'm not sure I'm gonna keep it. So I'm just gonna go into my master. Actually, I'm gonna go to my master player. Oh, I'm here. I'm gonna create a child of the master player called PP sword player. That's gonna be our sword character. And I'm gonna set that to the default. And here I'm gonna do a static mesh component as a child to the mesh. It's gonna be the sword. Spada. Socket will be the hand. Right. And there's a couple of ways. We probably want to use sockets properly for this, but for now I'm just gonna actually select the mesh, pause, anims, and I'm just gonna place it in a reasonable location straight away. This is not the ideal way to do it because it's very not very modular. I'm just doing it for now. It's very big, no? Probably should scale it down. Or it's a great sword. You can see we now have a sword in our hand. And we can swing the sword. And I'm just gonna scale it down a little bit. That's fine. That's not what this video is about. There we go. Am I recording? Yep, I am recording. Now we have a sword equipped. Probably gonna make that nicer. Okay. Actually, let's fix it up properly. This wasn't very nice. I just wanna... So, we are gonna go to our character. Character details, and we are gonna do a main and mesh. Off and mesh. Main and socket. Off and socket. And main and mesh, that's going to be a static mesh. It's also going to be a static mesh. And the sockets will be a name, and they will be single variables. There we go. And yeah, we could make a different data table with like specific weapons and stuff like that as well. I might do that later, but for now this is gonna be fine. So on begin play, we're gonna break. We are gonna create static mesh, create component by class, static mesh component. We're gonna attach component to component. We're gonna attach it to the mesh. And we're gonna promote this to a variable. Maybe main and mesh. Or actually, we're gonna just do like this. We're gonna go into the master character because the AI will need weapons and stuff as well. So we might as well just add two static mesh components. So main and mesh, off and mesh. Don't need to create them at runtime, so we can just delete this. But at begin play, we will grab these ones, the main hand mesh, the offhand mesh. We will set static mesh of the main hand one. Maybe we might move this to the master character. Actually, let's do that. No, because this is the player details. So main hand mesh, offhand mesh. And this is gonna be a static mesh. Static mesh. Change. There we go. And we're gonna plug it in there. And we're gonna get the mesh. Attach. Attach component to component. I'm gonna do it again. And we're gonna grab the main hand socket, put it in there. Main hand socket, offhand socket in there. Snap to target, snap to target, snap to target. Snap to target, snap to target, snap to target. There we go. We're gonna collapse this to a function. Set up weapon meshes. And now you will see nothing is happening. Delete the sword. Because we haven't really set that up. So I will go into the data table. The main hand will be the sword. The offhand will be the shield. And I will call the socket equip sword and equip shield. So now they will be attached, but they are not attached in the right place, you can see. So we need to go into our skeleton and actually set up the sockets. So hand right, I need to create a new socket. Equip sword and the left hand will have equip shield. And then I will select the socket for the shield and do add preview asset and select the shield. And do the same for the sword. Right click, add preview asset sword. And now we need to move these around so they are in a proper position. Something like that. Extremely annoying pivot point for this mesh. Down, down. I'm probably gonna exchange this mesh because this is too annoying. That's fine. Let's do the same. It's a little bit. Let's do the same thing for the shield. Something like that. Why didn't that work? Oh, we can see it's attached. Let me pause and see why. All right, I ended up doing some changes, so let's just go through them. Found some issues. So for starters, this we can just plug the get actor in the replicate rotate character. We can just plug get actor rotation straight away. That saves as a variable. That makes no sense to have that variable there. I also increased this timeline to 0.4. Makes it a little bit nicer. There was an issue with the rotation when we attack. So on completed here, on the move action, on completed we set the X and Y of the movement input to 0 again, because this is going to be 0 when there's no input, which means this doesn't trigger. It's going to trigger completed. So then we set these to 0 so that they go back to 0, because otherwise they will be saved as the last actual input. And in the rotate character, or in the light attack, move this can't take action. It was here. Move it to the start, because we shouldn't replicate either. And here we have a few options. So previously I just had this plugged in. So if you right click and split, so you can see if this is what you have. So right click here, split. And instead of using this, we're gonna split this one as well. So there's a few options here, but we're gonna plug in the get actor rotation, the X and Y of the rotation of the character here, because we only need to rotate in the Z, in the yaw. So this was here. So what we should do before, so if we don't have any movement input, we don't want to rotate, then we should just keep attacking in the same direction. So that's why we set this movement input variable to 0 when we stop our movement input. So if the X and the Y of the movement input, if any of them, so we use an OR boolean, if any of them is true. So if any of them are true, that means that that means there is a movement input. I mean, if it's not equal to 0, if any of them is not equal to 0, that means there is movement input, so we should rotate. But if both of them are 0, there's no input, so we should not rotate. So then we skip that. And the plugin here is gonna be the get input rotation and this one. That makes it a little bit more nicer. I think it was I think I paused when I fixed with the shield. I don't remember. I paused for some reason. But now it works, and if I stop the input, I just keep attacking in the same direction. There's also another option. We can also, this is up to you, but you could also just use your control rotation and not detect the input. So if you take the yaw from the control rotation, that means we're always gonna attack in the, oh wait, if we do that, I could remove this branch, skip this branch. That means we're always gonna attack in the camera direction, the controller direction. Some people might like that. I don't know. You decide how you want your combat system, but this is a way that you could do it. I guess it's more responsive probably for mouse and keyboard, because it's easy to like change the direction with the mouse. Once again, you do whatever you want to do. You could also make a select node with this. It's the same as here. And if it's true, use the input rotation, and if it's false, use the control rotation. So that means when I'm not actually doing any input, I'm gonna move towards the control rotation. But if there is input, I'm gonna rotate towards the input. So you can do it however you want to. That's just a few options. I'm gonna stick with this, and I'm not gonna use this. So I'm gonna have this branch connected, which means if there's no input, I'm gonna rotate. I'm not gonna rotate, and I'm only gonna rotate if there's actual input. That's how I'm gonna do it, and I think it works quite fine. And the issue with the shield, yeah, that's why I paused in the beginning. That was because I had the main hand mesh here. So main hand mesh, off hand mesh. Now they are attached in the right way. And all seems to work. So all good and well. And that's it for this video. Perfect. Let me know if there's any questions, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.